It started with the chainsaws. That god-awful whine pierced the early morning mist like a scream from hell, jolting me out of bed at dawn on a crisp autumn Saturday. I bolted to the window, heart pounding, expecting to see loggers in the state, forest beyond my property line. But no, the noise was coming from my woods, my sacred, untouched acres of maple and oak that had stood sentinel over my lakeside retreat for generations. And there, like a thief in broad daylight, was my neighbor, Karen, directing a crew of burly men with yellow hard hats as they felled tree after tree. Branches crashed like thunder, and my stomach dropped. What the hell was she doing on my land? I threw on a robe and stormed out the back door, my bare feet sinking into the dew-soaked grass. The air smelled of fresh-cut pine and diesel exhaust, a nauseating cocktail that matched the bile rising in my throat. "Karen," I shouted over the roar of machinery. She turned, her perfectly coiffed blonde hair gleaming under the rising sun, a clipboard in one manicured hand and a smug smile on her Botoxed face. "Oh, hello, Alex. Lovely morning, isn't it? We're just getting started on the project. My blood boiled. This wasn't her land. The property line had been clearly marked since my grandfather bought the place in the 50s. Rustic cabin on 10 acres of wilderness, hugging the shimmering shores of Lake Evergreen. Karen and her husband, some hotshot real estate developer from the city, had moved in next door 2 years ago, turning their modest lot into a McMansion eyesore. But this was trespassing on steroids. By the time I reached the fence-or, what was left of it, now mangled under a bulldozer's treads, the damage was already catastrophic. Half my woods were gone. Stumps jutted from the earth like broken teeth, and a massive excavator was digging what looked like the foundation for a house. No, bigger. A mansion, right up to the lake's edge. My lakefront. "This is my property," I yelled, waving my arms like a madman. The workers paused, glancing uncertainly at Karen. She laughed, a tinkling, infuriating sound. "Oh, Alex, sweetie, we've got the surveys. This is all ours now. You really should check your deeds." My world tilted. Surveys. Deeds. I'd inherited this land free and clear. Or so I thought. The rest of that day blurred into a nightmare of phone calls and frantic pacing. I called the county assessor, my lawyer buddy from college, even the local sheriff. But it was the weekend, and bureaucracy moves like molasses in January. Karen's crew didn't stop. By sunset, the clearing was a scar across my backyard, the lake now visible from her side, in a way it never had been. I stood at the edge of what remained of my forest, tears stinging my eyes. These woods weren't just trees, they were my sanctuary. After losing my wife to cancer 3 years ago, I'd retreated here to heal, spending hours hiking the trails we'd blazed together, listening to the loons call across the water. Now, it felt like Karen had ripped open that wound all over again. Betrayal burned hot in my chest. How could a neighbor do this? Why? As the machines rumbled into the night, floodlights casting eerie shadows, a chill settled over me. Ain't this? Wasn't just greed. It felt personal. The next morning I drove to the county records office as soon as it opened, my hands shaking on the wheel. The clerk, a kindly woman named Martha, who'd known my family for decades, pulled up the plats. Her face paled as she scrolled through the digital files. "Alex, this can't be right." My heart skipped. According to the latest survey, filed just 6 months ago, Karen's property line had magically shifted, gobbling up 5 acres of my woods and prime lakefront. "But that's impossible," I stammered. "I never sold or agreed to anything." Martha leaned in, whispering this survey was done by her husband's firm. "And look your signatures on the approval form." Forgery. The word hit me like a gut punch. It was my name, all right, but I'd never signed that. Emotion surged. Fear, helplessness. Who was Karen, really? A bored trophy wife, or something more sinister? I confronted her that afternoon, marching up her manicured driveway, where luxury cars gleamed like trophies. She answered the door in yoga pants and a pearl necklace, sipping a green smoothie. "Alex, darling, come in. Let's chat like adults." Her living room was a shrine to excessive marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and walls lined with abstract art that probably cost more than my cabin. Her husband, Victor, lounged on a leather sofa, smirking behind a newspaper. "What's this about forged documents?" I demanded, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. Karen's eyes widened in mock innocence. "Forged? Oh no. You must be mistaken. We bought that strip fair and square from the previous owner." "Previous owner? I was the owner," Victor chuckled. "Old man, you really need to keep better records." The deed transfer was notarized. Suspense coiled in my gut like a snake. They were lying, but why? And how deep did this go? That night, sleep evaded me. Every creak of the cabin sounded like intruders, every shadow a threat. I pored over old family papers by lamplight, discovering a faded letter from my grandfather, mentioning a disputed boundary back in the 70s, resolved in our favor. But nothing about a sale. As the clock ticked past midnight, a low hum started outside more machinery. I grabbed a flashlight and crept into the remaining woods, heart hammering. There, under the cover of darkness, workers were pouring concrete. Footings for what looked like a sprawling estate, complete with a private dock jutting into Mire Lick. A figure detached from the shadows. Karen, in a black coat, whispering urgently to a man in a suit. I ducked behind a tree, straining to hear. ... Make sure the permits are buried deep. No, one can trace it back. Trace what? My mind raced. Was this just about land? Or something bigger? Drugs? Money laundering? The emotion hit hard paranoia mixed with grief for my lost paradise. The following days blurred into a frenzy of investigation. I hired a private surveyor who confirmed the boundary shift was bogus based on manipulated GPS data. My lawyer, Sarah, filed an emergency injunction. But the judge, a golf buddy of Victor's, I learned delayed the hearing. Meanwhile, Karen's mansion rose like a phoenix from my ruined woods, towering walls, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, even a helipad sketched in the plans I sneaked a peek at during a friendly visit. Emotion choked me every time I looked out my window, anger at their audacity. Sorrow for the wildlife displaced, the birdsong silenced. Suspense built as anonymous calls started. Heavy breathing, then hang-ups. Was it them, warning me off? Stormy evening, as thunder rolled over the lake, I decided to dig deeper literally. Armed with a shovel and flashlight, I snuck onto the construction site, rain pelting my face like accusations. The ground was soft from the downpour, and I unearthed a buried time capsule of sorts. Old survey stakes from the 50s. Painted with my grandfather's initials. Proof. But as I pocketed one, headlights swept the clearing. Victor's SUV. I froze, suspense turning my blood to ice. He stepped out, umbrella in hand, eyes scanning the darkness. "Who's there?" he barked. I bolted, branches whipping my face, heart exploding in my chest. Did he see me? Back home, soaked and shivering, I called Sarah. "We have evidence now, but they're dangerous." The injunction hearing finally came, a packed courtroom buzzing with locals who'd heard the gossip. Karen sat primly in a designer suit, Victor beside her like a guard dog. My testimony poured out the forgery, the nighttime digs, the threats. Emotion cracked my voice as I described the wood's destruction. Those trees were my wife's favorite. We scattered her ashes there. The judge nodded sympathetically. But Karen's lawyer countered with a bombshell. A witness claiming I'd agreed to the sale over drinks last year. Lies. Suspense peaked as the judge recessed to deliberate. In the hallway, Karen approached, her perfume cloying. "Alex, why fight? We could be friends, or ... Her smile was a blade. The verdict came swiftly. Temporary halt to construction, pending full trial. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. That night, my cabin's power cut out. I lit candles, only to smell smoke fire licking the porch. Arson. I grabbed the extinguisher, dousing the flames, but the message was clear. They wouldn't stop. Emotion fueled my resolve. Fear turned to fury. I installed cameras, hired a PI. What? He uncovered, twisted the knife. Victor's firm was bankrupt, desperate for prime real estate to flip. Karen, not his wife, his accomplice in a string of property scams across states. It forged deeds before ruined lives. The climax hit on a moonless night. Alarms blared motion sensors in the woods. I rushed out, shotgun in hand for bears. Officially, to find Victor tampering with the boundary markers. "It's over," I growled. He spun, wild-eyed. "You don't understand? We need this land?" A scuffle ensued, rain-slick ground turning to mud. He lunged. I dodged, the gun discharging into the air. Sirens wailed sheriff, tipped off by my pie. Victor was cuffed, spilling everything. The forgeries, the bribes. Even plans for a hidden boathouse to smuggle ... something drugs. No, counterfeit art. Karen fled, but was caught at the airport, in the end. The mansion was demolished, my woods replanted with saplings that would grow tall again. The lake whispered peace once more, but scars remained the emotional toll. Suspense of what-ifs. Sold the cabin, moved to the city, but carried the lesson. Neighbors aren't always what they seem. And sometimes, the real mansion is the home you fight to keep.